Hey everyone and welcome to this video. Angular has introduced a new model function which allows us to use signal-based two-way data binding in Angular applications, and this is what we are going to do in this video. So let's get started. We have an application in which we have two different components inside our app component. One is the notifications manager, which allows us to add and remove notifications, and then one is this notification button. So whenever I click the notification button, you can see that the value also increases up top here, and I can remove notification and I can reset the count. This app is actually quite similar to all the recipes that we have in the Angular Cookbook, which I published in December, but this was released just now, so this is sadly not part of the book, but still there are a lot of cool recipes that you can get from the Angular Cookbook, so check it out at the link below. Now let's have a look at the code. As I mentioned, we have the app component, which is right here, and this is the parent component. And this right now uses both the app notifications button component and the app notifications manager component. Now, as we know that we have two sibling components that need to interact with each other, that's why we have to have the state within the parent component within the app component. And this is what we have right here. We have the notifications count here, which is set to 10. So when I go and refresh the app, you can see that it starts from 10, and then this value is passed to both the manager and this component. Now, whenever any of the buttons are clicked, you can see that we call the respective functions within the manager, and then the manager emits this output from those functions. So from add notification, it emits the new value. Similarly, it goes to remove notification and emits the new value, and for the reset as well. So the manager's job is basically first to render the value right here, notifications count, which you can see right here. And then whenever we click a button, it basically goes inside and basically emits the value using this event emitter. Finally, if we look at the notifications button, you'll see that it just renders the count, which we see in the header right here. And then of course it is importing this as an input. So if I go to the app component HTML, you can see that the app holds this notifications count property right here, which is the state property, and it passes the notifications count to both of the components, and it listens to the count change event emitter from the manager. Now, how could we do that with the new Angular provided model based inputs, and especially the two-way data binding? Now, the fun part is that the count and count change is a convention that a lot of developers follow automatically. But when we go to the model-based input, we not only get a signal, but we can also reduce the need of an emitter because we are using the same model input for two-way data binding. Let me show you how. So first of all, we need to go to our app component, and here we'll see that we have the notifications count here. So first we will go to our notifications manager component, and we are going to replace this particular input from the model-based input. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say count equals, and if I type model, you should be able to see that the model is being imported from Angular core, and this is the function which basically turns this count into a model signal, as you can see. Now the value right now here is unknown, but we can provide this the initial value, for example 0, and that would ensure that we have gotten a value. Now I can remove this count, and I can also remove the count change as well. So I'm gonna comment this out as well. Now a lot of things would break because we have changed this regular input from a model input, which is a signal. So first of all, this count plus plus has to now change to count.update. Here we can get the value of the count, and here we can just do count plus 1. And we're going to do the same thing from here as well. So here, instead of minus minus, we can just say count minus 1. Now we're going to also comment out the count change emit from here, and from here as well. And the final one is just going to use set to 0. As you know, the signal has two different methods. We have set to just set a value, and then update to get the current value and then modify the returned value or return the modified value. Now this also has to change, so we need to use the method to get the value and then check. If it's 0, then it basically just does nothing. Now I can actually remove all of this, and you can see already how much clean this looks, and we don't have the event emitter anymore. So I can also remove this input, output, and event emitter right from here. I really like this so far. Now the problem is the app component HTML is still using the regular input and output right here. So what we need to change here is we're just gonna remove the count changed, and what we can do here is we can essentially go inside and do this, which means now this count property that we have provided, it's going to be treated as a signal, and it's also going to reflect back as well. So if I go to my app now, you see that here it says model signal because we have not changed the HTML in the manager. So let's go to the manager, and here instead of using the count like this, we need to use the getter method just like this. And now if I go to my application, you can see the count value is 10, and if I add notification or remove, you can see everything works exactly the same. So that is the beauty of the model based input right there. And that is pretty much it. If you just need to migrate from one way, which is inputs and outputs, to the model based input, that's all you need. But if you are here for the bonus, let me show you how to convert the entire application using signals, so we also avoid other inputs and output. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our app component, and here I'm going to change this one into a signal as well. So I can simply say notifications count is essentially a signal, and here we can provide the value 10. Let's import the signal from Angular core. We don't really need this function anymore because we are not using that in the HTML at all. So we can remove that function. We can save this, and in the app component HTML, now that we are basically using this notifications count for the two-way data binding, we don't need to use the parenthesis because it automatically understands that we are working with a signal, or it internally handles it as a signal. But here we are not supposed to actually pass a signal, we are supposed to pass a number. So we can just use this right here, and that should be enough. Now, if I go to the notifications button component, here you're going to see that we are still using the input, the regular input. So we can also change this as well. So here we can say count equals, and here we can use input signal and assign the value 0 by default. That also means that we need to go to our HTML, and then instead of this, we need to use the method to basically get the value just like this. Now, if I refresh, you can see that here we have the add notification, remove notification, and reset count. All of that working out of the box, and everything looks nice. Now, if we just want to reflect what we have done so far, we can go to the Git history and see what we have changed. You can see that we have replaced, or we have removed one line of code from the app component HTML. From the TypeScript file, we've removed a bunch of lines from here, but I think the major difference is going to be in the notifications manager. So if I go to the HTML, barely nothing, but if I go to the TypeScript file, here you can see that we have removed the event emitters, and we have removed all the emit statements that we had. So from this huge file, now we have a bit tinier file, and you can imagine that if you have a big code base, it's going to help quite a lot as well. And from the notifications button, you can see we just changed this line and this line, so nothing much changed, but significantly the performance would have been increased because now we are using signals, and we can obviously go towards making sure that all the components that we have right now use the on push change detection strategy. So here you can use a change detection to change detection strategy dot on push, and you can use it on all the components that we have right now. I'm going to also remove the input from here, and I'm going to apply this in the notifications manager as well. And if you look at our app now, you can see that everything still works perfectly fine. So that's pretty much it. This was supposed to be a really small tutorial. If you learned something new, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And as always, happy coding. I'm going to see you in the next one.